Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah on Parshat Nasso. It's the second portion of Sefer Bar Midbar. It's known in English numbers. Interestingly enough, this year there's a bit of a split. It is always, however, right around the time of Shavuos. In the case of people in Israel, it will be read on the Parsha the day before Shavuos, and for those living in Chutz La'aretz outside of Israel, will be read the week after Shavuot. However, it either comes immediately before or immediately after. And the Parsha begins with dealing with the tribes of the family groups of the Leviim, Bnei Kohat, Bnei Merari, etc., who are based on revolve from the sons of Levi, one of the 12 tribes. In any event, it describes their duties in transporting various parts of the Mishkan, the sanctuary, in Bnei Israel's journeys through the desert. After going through this and taking a census of how many Leviim there were, male Leviim from the age of 30 to 50, the Parsha then commands that through Hashem, that all people who are Tamei, in other words, have various spiritual impurities, must be outside the camp, because since Hashem is dwelling in the camp, there cannot be any spiritual impurities. Dwells in the sanctuary, Mishkan. Now, the next part of the Parsha goes on to discuss two mitzvahs, or commandments anyway, of Hashem, that are very bit unusual. One of them is dealing with the sota, that is dealing with a married woman who is in isolation with a man that is not her husband, but there is no witnesses to, at least not two witnesses, which required that she was disloyal to her husband. So she's made to take this whole test where she has to bring a sacrifice, a korban. She has to drink of this in the clay vessel of this water mixed with soil from the foot of the sanctuary, for the sanctuary, and the name of Hashem, it's an ineffable name, is dissolved into the water, which teaches us that how important shalom bayis, peace between husband and wife, is. That if Hashem's even willing to have his name dissolved, if she is in fact guilty of having committed adultery with this other man, both she and the person who she was being disloyal with, both the man and she, will both die in a rather painful way. However, if she is innocent, she will be blessed with a child within a year. Now, the next piece of the Parsha is dealing with the subject of Nazir. Now, Nazir is dealing with a man and woman who takes a vow for usually 30 days, though it can be longer, to take three actions: to not drink wine or eat any product of grape for that 30-day period, to not cut their hair, and third of all, to not deliberately intentionally expose themselves to tumas mace, which means impurity from a dead body, or if they were in a structure in Ohel where a dead body had been. And if they do so, they have to start their 30-day Nazirite period all over again. Now, there are two different elements in here. First, it seems that being a Nazir is a praiseworthy action, because it says in Pasuk Chet, Kol Yemei Nazirus Kodeshu Hashem. All the days of his abstinence, he is holy to Hashem, God. Yet, a few verses later, it says, on the 8th day, he's got to bring a korban. And one of those korbans is a sin offering. So why should he have to bring a sin offering if it's such a laudatory act that he's Kodesh to Hashem? And it is explained that when a man or woman takes on Naziris, they are effectively separating themselves from society in many ways. Now, that can have its positive aspects. Now, it's explained in Midrashim that if a person is doing that, man or woman, is doing that is to because they have seen the test of the Sota or seen some other painful sinning, and they are doing it for that reason, their behavior is laudatory. However, there's also an aspect of the sin offering, because that is not the normal way of the Torah. We're encouraged as Hashem's people to partake of the world, even such a thing as wine. Something that's called the klipa noga. It can be, in other words, either be used for pure or impure purposes. For example, wine or any other alcoholic beverage used excessively can lead to many problems, such as alcoholism. However, if used properly, it can be a sanctification. We see it in many Jewish ceremonies. The weekly kiddush that's made on Shabbat. A couple, the first act they share after they are married under the cup is to share from a glass of wine. And the wine is also being held when you make the seven brachas, benedictions, while the couple is still under the marriage canopy. And it's also used for bris milah. So for all of these ceremonies, it can be an elevating thing if used properly. However, if one is, by avoiding those, one is not mastering him or herself, but is trying to avoid responsibility. In any event, after the mitzvah of the Nazir, the next aspect of the Parsha is dealing with the blessing of the Kohanim, which we have today, which is experienced today. In Israel, it's done on a daily basis in the synagogue. In Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel, it's done on special yantivs and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuos, in other words, which I'll have more to say shortly. And then the last half of the Parsha, for 89 verses, it goes on to describe the gifts of each one of the princes, Nasi of each tribe. Now, very interestingly, the gift they give is at the end of the dedication, after the Mishkan has already been built, and they contribute oxen and wagons to help the Levium transport the various parts of the Mishkan sanctuary after it's been assembled. Now, Sounds like a very generous act. However, there's an important lesson here. The people contributed everything needed for the Mishkan when it was being when materials were requested for it. So where were the Nasiim, the princes at that time? And they assumed the people would not be generous, and they would provide whatever was needed. To their amazement, nothing was needed because the people were so dedicated to contributing to the Mishkan that Moshe at a certain point had to say, enough, we have as much material as we can use. And therefore, the princes came up with this gift. What do we learn from here, among other things, is that when one has the opportunity to do a mitzvah, whether it's in this kind of thing, dedicating for things like necktie Mishkan, the houses of worship, yeshivas, seminaries, education institutions, many other things, is to do it now and not wait on the assumption that somebody else may do it and you'll just finish the job. That is not something an individual should be doing. And it then concludes with a totaling of all the gifts that the Nasiim brought, which were identical for each one of the days, 12 days of dedication in Mishkan, consisted of a number of items. Now, 89 Pesukim, verses, more than half the Parsha is dedicated to this, even though the gifts for the Mishkan seem to be identical. However, there is a great significance because it's explained by various midrashim. It has a different significance for each one of the tribes, even though the gifts are identical. There's 12 different meanings, which also teaches there are a number of different ways of focusing and serving Hashem. We all have different abilities. That was seen in last week in the way the tribes were set up around the Mishkan sanctuary. Now, what I would like to focus on now is the dedication the blessing that is given in the following commandment. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Diver el Aaron el Banav Laimor Koach Yivarecha Yivarechu Bnei Yisrael Amor Lahem Anoi Yivrecha Anoi Mishmerecha Yadonoi Panav Elecha Yisa Adonoi Panav Elecha. Speak to Aaron his son, so you should bless the children of Israel, saying to them, may Hashem bless you and safeguard you. May Hashem illustrate his countenance for you, be gracious to you. May Hashem lift his countenance to you and establish peace for you. And then goes on, Shemo et Shemi al Bnei Yisrael ani v'recha. Let them place my name upon the children of Israel, and I shall bless them. So in other words, the Kohanim are doing the blessing as Hashem Shlichim, representatives, but he was also bless everybody, both the Kohanim, the priests, and the Jewish people. Now, very interesting aspect here that can be asked is, what is the deeper significance of these blessings? In fact, to today, we have it. And we do not look, when the Kohanim are blessing, they hold their hands out, separate the 10 fingers, but they cover themselves with their talus prayer shawl, including their fingers. And there is a custom that many people take on, that they also do not look directly when the Kohanim are blessing them. Now, what is the reason for this? It's given in the times of the temple, the Shekhinah the divine presence, was literally on the fingertips of the Kohanim, and if anybody saw it, they could become blinded by it. We do not have the Shekhinah now because there is no temple. The Shekhinah is present, but not in the same intensity. It won't be until the temple is rebuilt in Zman Mashiach. But nevertheless, there is that custom. And let's look a little more at this. When the Kohanim bless, their hands, their fingers are outset, their fingers are spread, and they basically say these three blessings. Now, and the following is based on a number of different Zohars. The book of Rav Shimon, the holy book of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, and who's he celebrated Omer, his life, and his revelation of the Zohar. Now, when one raises one's hand above their head, they can mean one or two things. It has both a negative and a positive side. The negative side would be as follows. The fingers are the most attached, it's the extremity, the fingernails, and the fingers are the most detached and distant from the heart and the mind. And if it's done without humility, it is done from a place of egotism, haughtiness, it brings down the spiritually impure forces and can cause great damage. However, if it is used properly, if it's done with humility, not only will it not have that effect, it will in fact have the opposite effect. It will bring down all kinds of spiritual beneficence, because it's God's desire to bless us and bring us positive things. And those 10 fingers represent the 10 spheros of Hashem. Now, the 10 spheros are the 10 qualities that we recognize from Hashem. God by himself, Hashem, is obviously in his essence unknowable, and we cannot understand him, his essence, but we can understand his qualities that he chooses to share with us. And those 10 spheros were also the qualities he used to build the universe in the 7 days of creation. Now, when the Kohanim raise their hands, Hashem is then wants to bring down the beneficence to people, and by them, and those 10 fingers represent the 10 spheros, and therefore the blessings that Hashem has been waiting to give us that are in the worlds above come down through the Kohanim. Now, interestingly enough, the Kohanim have Aaron and his sons and subsequent Kohanim down to today have a counterpart in the world above, and that is the angel Michael. He is one of the angels in heavenly spheres that also is helping Hashem. He follows Hashem's commandments concerning how to bring beneficence or other things to the world as his messenger. He also has, he is the angel of chesed, pure kindness, rachamim, mercy. and there was no aspect of din justice with him. And so too with the Kohen. Now the Kohen, who is equivalent in the lower world, our world, is somebody who has humility and chesed. Because if somebody does not have, a Kohen who does not have those qualities, or is even angry at members of the shul, the congregation, he cannot give a blessing. If he's mad only at one person in the congregation, because he has that power to help bring down blessings. And so if that's the case, why don't we have any Kohanim that represent strict justice? Because Kohanim, by their nature, represent kindness and mercy, just like the angel Gabriel. Now, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to emulate this? And it teaches us that qualities we should be reaching out with to not only in serving Hashem, but in relating to our fellow men and women, should be one of chesed, kindness, rachamim, understanding. That can be, doesn't have to be complicated things. It can either be having a pleasant face, greeting people in the morning, also, of course, also other things, giving charity, welcoming people as guests, and generally trying to make the place a world. And this quality is very apropos at this time of year to be in Parshat Nasso, because the whole Yontif holiday of Shavuot, which was coming in a few days, represents kindness. The Torah is the Torah of Chesed. It was God's Chesed because He created the whole universe. He didn't need our worship. He didn't need us, but He did it so, created the universe so He could have beings to reward. And if we emulate these qualities and try to reach out in all ways possible, small and big, to our fellow men and women, we will hopefully merit getting renewed for another year of Torah on Shavuot, and also hopefully, as we reach out to other, we will heal divisions, the sinus condemn, baseless hatred, and become a united people and bring the ultimate redemption. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.